Welcome to the eCommerce Badassery Podcast, the place for scrappy entrepreneurs who want to learn actionable steps and strategies to grow the traffic, sales, and profit in your e-commerce business. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster, a 20-year retail veteran and former brick-and-mortar boutique owner who spent 3 years as the only employee of a 7-figure online store. That shit was crazy. I know exactly how it feels to do all the things, and I'm sharing everything I learned the hard way so you don't have to. I may have started this business by accident, but supporting badass bosses like you lights me the fuck up, and I am so stoked to see you grow. Are you ready, babe? Let's roll. Welcome back to the eCommerce Badassery Podcast. I am your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster. Raise your hand if you ever struggled to stay consistent with your email marketing and you don't always know what to say. A few weeks ago in my weekly email, The Edit, head to ecommercebadassery.com/free stuff if you want in. I asked if you had ever thought about implementing a newsletter in your e-commerce business and if you wanted me to talk through some ideas on the podcast. You said yes, so here we are. Before we talk about why they're a good idea, let's define what I mean by a newsletter in this sense, because newsletter has essentially become a term to describe any manual email that gets sent, kind of like how tissues are called Kleenex or bandages Band-Aids. What I'm referring to is a recurring email that gets sent on a daily, weekly, monthly, or even a quarterly basis that covers multiple different topics or includes multiple pieces of content. Again, if you're on my email list, you'll recognize The Edit as a newsletter. Usually I include some sort of update, story, biz tip, etc. I'll reference that week's podcast episode, share some email tips, and other random educational or fun things I find around the web. The idea of a newsletter has been pretty taboo in the email space for a while because the consensus was that you didn't want to distract your subscriber with too much information. You wanted to focus on only one call to action in your email and guide your subscriber into taking the action you want them to take. While that is definitely true for your email automation, such as your welcome series, checkout abandonment, etc., when it comes to your weekly email campaigns, you do have a bit more leeway. As an e-commerce business, it might seem strange to implement a newsletter, but when used with intention, they can have a lot of positive effects on your business. One of the number one struggles I hear from e-commerce business owners when it comes to staying consistent with email is they don't know what to say or they don't want to be annoying. And I think the real reason for this is because so many of us think that every email needs to have a hard sell in it, that we have to ask for the sale every single time. And while asking for the sale is an important part of all marketing activities, you don't always have to ask for it directly in order to get it. I talk more about this in episode 44, How to Create an Email Marketing Calendar, where I walk through my STAR method. But the general idea is you want to think about what else your customers care about that you can talk to them about. For example, if you sell makeup, your customer probably cares about skincare. If you sell workout gear, your customer probably cares about health and fitness. The other part of this is feeling like we always need something new to say because we don't want to repeat ourselves too much. I also talk about this in that episode because at the end of the day, most customers need to see and hear things multiple times before they'll take action. Repetition is your friend. But I realize that knowing these things intellectually and being able to stop letting them hold us back are two very different things. The nice thing about a recurring newsletter is it gives you structure. It gives you a clear outline of the type of content you need to put together, which can remove a lot of guesswork and hesitation around the I don't know what to say. Sending a recurring newsletter will also begin to train your subscribers. One of the key elements to a newsletter is the schedule of that email. No matter the frequency or day and time of week you send it, your subscribers will start to look out for it. In the rare occasion that my newsletter went out late, there were always a handful of people who would reach out asking if they had missed it. Not only will you train them to expect your email, When they know there's going to be something of value inside, they're going to be a lot more engaged overall. The other nice thing about a newsletter format versus a single call to action is that it allows you to reach a lot of different people on your list in one email. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of overlap in your email marketing list. They're all interested in your product and industry, but you're naturally going to have some smaller niches and pockets within that overall list. And while one topic or product might be super interesting to a portion of your audience, the rest may have zero interest in it at all, and now that email is completely irrelevant to them. With a newsletter where you're curating multiple different pieces of content, you have a better chance that there's something for everyone, giving them more reasons to click and ultimately increasing your email engagement, aka your click rate, which is a great signal to the email service providers that these people want to hear what you have to say, and it will have a positive impact on your deliverability. And last but certainly not least is that with this increased attention and engagement from your audience, you're likely to see an overall increase in revenue. One of the hardest parts about selling anything is there's one objection you cannot solve for, and that's timing. People are either ready to buy from you or they're not. But committing to regularly showing up in their inbox, providing value, and positioning yourself as a resource means you'll be top of mind and the first person they'll think of when they're ready to buy. Honestly, that is a huge part of email marketing overall. So, should you create a newsletter? While I do think every e-commerce business has the opportunity to implement a newsletter in their business, there are a few specific cases where I think it will have the most impact. So let's chat through those different scenarios and some ideas for the content you can include. If your business is subscription first, there's a pretty good chance you don't have a whole lot of new things happening to talk about. You're probably not doing big collection launches, or at least not very often. You might not have any new products to talk about. You probably don't have a lot of sales or promotions happening either. In that case, a newsletter can be a great option for you. If you're not sure what to include, go back to the STAR method I mentioned earlier, which you can learn more about in episode 44. And you can also check out the non-salesy email ideas I give you in episode 31. What else does your customer care about that you can talk about? What other content can you curate for them? A former client and biz friend started a newsletter in her subscription-first business a few months ago. In this, she shares a few of her fave internet product finds and other content around motherhood and just getting through life. It's a super fun email that I look forward to every month, and she's seen great engagement on it. On the flip side of that, what if you have so many new products and events and there's just so much to tell people about? That's another sign that a newsletter would be a good fit for you. Instead of having to send multiple emails about all the things, you can curate this on a weekly basis and just put it all in the same email. One of my very first clients had been doing this for a long time, and she was worried that she had too much information in them and that she had to start separating the content out over different days and different segments. But those emails had such good engagement and generated so much revenue. I recommended that she keep sending them. Over the years, she had really trained her customers to expect them, and I wasn't going to interrupt that flow. To this day, she still sends those emails and they still generate a ton of revenue. The only real change she's made is that she resends the same email a few days later with a new subject line to anyone who didn't engage with it the first time. You can also repurpose your newsletter content into other emails throughout the week. For example, maybe in the newsletter, you mention a new product that just released or give a sneak peek of something that's going to be releasing soon. In the newsletter version, there's only so much information you can include, right? Because you have limited space. But now you can feature that product in its own email on a different day and take a much deeper dive into it. Stores with a heavy local presence can take a similar approach as the store with a lot of information to share. Maybe you have a brick and mortar and you've got different events happening and community updates and happenings around town that you want to include. You can even partner up with some of your other local businesses to swap newsletter shout-outs. And this is a great tactic even for online-only businesses. If you're in an industry that has a lot of educational information to share, whether it's about the products or the lifestyle your products are a part of, then a newsletter might be a great option for you too. You can curate content from around the web, other people in your industry, and even just focus on sharing education on your own blog and then sharing bits of pieces of that in your newsletters. Whichever category you fall into, one of the things you want to be careful about is that your newsletter doesn't get stale and boring. Part of the joy of a newsletter for the subscriber is the surprise and delight that it can bring. So you'll want to make sure you jazz it up when you can. The easiest way to do this is by creating themes throughout the year. If you do it monthly, you can tie it into the holidays. And even if you end up sending your newsletter weekly, maybe you make the first one of each month themed with the holidays. Another way to add some excitement is to include some of your own personal stories. This is especially powerful if you are the face of your brand in any way. We already know people buy from people, so if you can inject a bit of yourself in these newsletters, that can go a long way to connecting with your audience. And even if you're not the direct face of the brand, then just include some behind the scenes from your business or general updates. Make them feel like they're part of it. I already mentioned the possibility of doing newsletter swaps or curating items and content from other small businesses, but you could even ask for newsletter contributions. So maybe they write up a short 500-word article that you feature, or give your subscribers a special discount. You could even do some features on founders of the brands that you work with or the businesses that you partner with. Another benefit of a newsletter that I want to touch on is that it can act as your one long-form piece of content that you then repurpose throughout the week on your other marketing channels. I already touched on it a bit with the idea of taking a deeper dive into a portion of your newsletter in another email, like a particular product, but the same concept can be applied to your social media content. In Content Badassery, that's a mini course I released a few months ago. I'll stick a link in the show notes for it. I have a video lesson in there that shows you how to take one long form piece of content like a blog post and repurpose it into 41 different social media posts. But you can do the same thing with your newsletter content too. Now the question becomes, is your newsletter going to replace all the other emails you send? The answer, probably not. The only time it might come close is if you're a subscription-first business, or maybe you sell something that people don't buy very often. I worked with a client a few years ago who sold a cover to protect your car in a flood. Once someone buys one of those, they really don't need another one for a long time, if ever. For the rest of you, this is something you can add into your existing rotation. I recommend going weekly or monthly, depending upon how much information you can include, but you'll still want to take deep dives, do product launches and features, and of course, promotions when it makes sense for your business. If you still struggle with what to say in between those newsletters, check out episodes 31, 32, and 44 and get your hands on Content Badassery, which includes a ton of content prompts and subject lines that you can mix and match to create endless content ideas. One last note before we go. If you decide to give newsletters a try, please make sure you give them a fair shot before you give up. You'll want at least a month if you're doing it weekly and 3 months if you're doing it monthly, maybe even a bit longer if your list is on the smaller side. You know what? Just commit for a minimum of 6 months before you fully judge it. It takes time for people to catch on. And even if you don't end up going the newsletter route, I'm hoping today's episode sparked some email ideas for you because I know it's still a struggle for the majority of us. In either case, let me know how it goes. I'm excited to hear all about it. And that, my friends, is a wrap. Have a kick-ass rest of your day, and I'll see you on the flip side. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more about growing your e-commerce business, get started with my free resource library at ecommercebadassery.com/free stuff and get an invite to the Lounge, my e-commerce marketing membership. When you're ready for one-on-one support, apply to work with me at ecommercebadassery.com/apply. Before you go, would you do me a quick favor? Leave a rating and review and tap that follow button. This pushes me up the chart so I can support more scrappy e-commerce entrepreneurs just like you. I'm on a mission to reach as many as I can, and I could really use your help. Thanks so much in advance. Until next time, e-commerce friend, stay badass.